Hello guys, it's Uche Alex here again and welcome to this course where we'll be looking at typography. Typography is an important part of our designs. It's simply defined as the art of using text or the art of working with texts. Most graphic designs are not complete without typography because most of the information that we will be receiving from these designs are conveyed through text or typography. So typography is an important part of our design. That is why we have taken out a separate video to talk about typography and its various types. So basically, there are different types of typography or different categories of typography. We have the serif, we have the sans serif, we have display fonts, we have the handwriting and monospace fonts. So let's take a brief look at some of these different categories of typography. Let's head over to Google Fonts. It's fonts.google.com. So under the categories here, you see serif, sans serif, display, handwriting, and monospace. So these are basically the 5 groups of typography or fonts. So let's uncheck some of these fonts and leave only serif. So every font here right now are serif fonts, and we call them serif fonts because at the edge of these letters that make up the font, we have projections. We have extra projections by their edges. Let me show you what I mean. Let's look at a bigger text for us to understand. Now, if you look at this letter T, if you look under, you see that there is a projection here by the edge of the T, the edge of the horizontal stroke that make up the T. You see extra stroke that has been added. If you look at the base as well, the base of the vertical stroke that makes the T, you see this extra stroke that has been added as well. So this is why they are called serif. Then look at this big letter F. You notice that there is a protruding stroke here at the top, and look at the bottom of the line as well. You see two other protruding strokes, one here and one here. Look at this side as well. One goes up and one goes down. Here too, this one comes down. So this is what we call serif because of all these extra strokes that pop out from the edges. So serifs are probably the first set of fonts that came out and are mostly used in print publications. So they are more like traditional fonts. Then we have the sans serif. Sans serif is basically font that does not have these extra strokes. So sans is a French word for without serif. All right, it's just in sans serif the extra strokes are removed. If you look at this letter F, you see that those extra strokes are not there. So this is just basically a letter F without the extra strokes. Look at this T here, that is serif. You see it has extra strokes. Then see the sans serif, it doesn't have the extra strokes. So if we go straight to our Google Fonts and change our selection to sans serif, you will realize that all the fonts that are being displayed here do not have the extra strokes by their edges. Serif is more like the traditional font that has always been there, and removing the extra strokes make the font simple and easy to read and understand. So sans serif is usually seen as modern fonts, all right, and they are mostly or easier to understand because of the removal of those extra strokes that can be confusing at times. So unlike the serif fonts that are mostly used in publications and prints, the sans serif is mostly used in digital products like on the website. So let's move forward to the display fonts. Display fonts are much more stylish fonts. Because of their decorative nature, you don't use display fonts throughout your designs. You just use them briefly while you complement them with a more readable font. So let me give you an example of how they are used briefly in designs. If you look at this particular poster, I think it's a wedding poster. Yeah, it is a wedding poster. If you look throughout the design, more readable fonts were used, but when it comes to the name of the bride and the bridegroom, display font has been used to make it more decorative. So you see the Audrey and Thorny are written with more decorative fonts, while the core messages you are invited to the wedding and the time and the venue were written with more readable fonts. So that's how you use display fonts in designs. For you use them briefly while complementing them with more readable fonts, which could be either serif or sans serif. So let's get back to our font category. Let's check out the handwriting. So just as the name implies, the handwriting looks like it's handwritten, right? So it's also almost like display fonts that are styled or decorative, but then this is more focused on this we are created to look like it's handwritten. So we use this briefly in designs as well. Sometimes too, sometimes we use this briefly as well as the way we use display fonts. Sometimes you can use them for the whole body of text depending on the particular one we are using. So the monospace, as the name implies, is the kind of font that has a poor number of spaces between them. Unlike other fonts that the spaces between them are mostly irregular. So trying to understand all these fonts in these categories of typography and how to use them can be very, 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 very intimidating. But it doesn't have to be. The only way you can understand how to make use of these fonts is simply by practice. You can't know them in one single day. You can only know how to use fonts by practice. And throughout the courses that will be dishing out after this, we'll be having several projects where I'll be showing you, we'll be using a lot of fonts. Then I'll be showing you how we decide to use these fonts, and you'll be learning how to apply these various fonts in these categories. Before we wrap this course up, I need to remind you that fonts or typography is an important part of every design we make. No matter how beautiful your design looks, font can mess up your design when you use the wrong one. Because fonts too can portray or can send across a level of emotion. Let me show you what I mean by that. Now, take a good look at this. Someone wrote here, I will always find you. And this is, I will always find you. These are the same message being passed across, but with different fonts. This very first one makes it look like a note from a loved one. I will always find you. If you look at it, and it's cool and relaxing, and it's written with handwriting font. So So it instantly gives you the feeling that the person who wrote this actually took their time to use their hand to write it. Meanwhile, it's actually typed and printed out. So this is one of the ways or applications of handwritten font style. So this is a note from a loved one. This is the impression that this particular message is giving out. But look at this second note. The same message, but the font used gives a wrong impression. It's looking like a note from a serial killer that is written with blood, probably. Because if you look at the font, it's like it's written with scratches. It actually gives off a bad impression and can make someone really scared. So fonts really matter. The kind of fonts we use to pass a message really matter. So no matter how beautiful your design is, once you use the wrong font, it can pass entirely a wrong message, which can destroy the purpose of your design. So subsequently, we'll be handling a lot of projects where we'll be using a lot of text. So by practice, you'll be able to understand how text works and various other theories about text we won't or we haven't mentioned in this video. So you can only master fonts by practice. So there are other aspects or theories of typography that we won't mention in this video because they'll only end up confusing you. Then we'll only mention them or you only see how we apply them by practice. So subsequently in this program, as we handle projects and begin to use fonts, I'll be mentioning these parts of typography and then you easily understand them by practice. So that's that for this course. See you in the next course.